Oh hi. Lielvarde, the city in the central part of Latvia, the administrative center of the Lielvarde region. It is located on the right coast of Daugava. Lielvarde's population in 2019 made 5934 persons. Minus 866 people since 2011. The Lielvarde volus 9643 persons. Till 2009 the city was a part of the Ogre district. The territory in which there is a city before arrival of the German knights was a zone of the conflicts between Bodices and Balts. The settlement of Lielvarde is mentioned in the chronicle under 1201. Archaeological excavations find in a set prehistoric artifacts, so Annas Arini's works allowed to establish that else in the first millennium BB these places. The ancient settlement of the Evacolms, or Gore of Gods. The Latvian ancestors of ancient Balts began to occupy. For construction of the ancient settlement, people used the natural peninsula formed at confluence of the Rumbini River with Daugava, and the ravine allowing to protect the settlement from attacks formed by her. The peninsula was separated by a deep 10-meter ditch, surrounded with a bulk shaft 4 meters high over which the wooden paling rose. In the 9th-13th centuries there was a settlement of Bodices here, and burials of Latgal and Zemgal are found in the nearby burial ground that demonstrates that at the time this settlement was the significant territorial center. The historian Oleg Pukliak connects the name of the area with the Scandinavian roots. The word Vard means the pier, the rock or the rock visible from water from far away. In 1201 the Archbishop Albert granted Lielvarde to the knight Daniel from Bannerov in Leni possession, though still Lvivsky leader Aldovin ruled there. This name in translation from Lvivsky is meant by tall person or long liver. The German knights took Lielvarde during the crusade up Daugava in 1205. In the Livonian chronicle Heinrich Ludwigski tells that Bodices from Ixkill, where the knight Conrad from Meyendorf was sent by Mr. took refuge in Lielvarde. The Bishop Albert granted him this city in the benefice, and Bodices had to accept kindly him as the Father's children, and to judge with him about the world and further distribution of Christianity. Leibowitz, having received grace of a baptism from the first Livonian bishop Maynard, scoffed at Christ's belief and more than once, according to them, destroyed her ablution in Dvina, having heard about approach of the bishop, became together with other, still pagans, to prepare for flight, and for the morning, having invited to itself the above-named Conrad, secretly planned to kill him. But the arrow about which fork now will wound less. Conrad, knowing about their cunning, I left to them in full arms, accompanied by the and when they started a long talk, he on each question gave the suitable answer. There were Bodices which were even more struck with it, took to the heels and, using boats, rose up the river to the Lielvarde lock with wives and small children. They made it clear that think of earlier hosted baptism a little. Pilgrims, seeing that newly converted Bodices to such an extent are mistaken and, like dogs, return to vomit, forgetting about the Christianity accepted once, full of jealousy about God, were let to pursue running. Soon however they noticed that those, having connected to other pagans from Lielvarde, left the villages and went together to forest slums. Then pilgrims, having enclosed fire, lit their city. After the pilgrims went up Dvina, and Bodices from the Escrate Lock, having heard about an event, disappeared to safe forest places. And it happened that their lock, on the grace of God, was burned, and they, having given hostages, made the peace from Tevtona and promised to come soon to Riga and to be christened. Subsequently and was. The first stone Lielvarde lock began to be built in 1206, not on the place where now ruins, and on Gore of Gods, near the Lvivsky wooden city remained. His construction was complete by 1229 when the lock is mentioned in the chronicle already as existing. Under 1213 Heinrich Latviški reports about attack of Lithuanians on Lielvarde in response to continuous raids of the German knights from Kukenois and let of the minding Lithuanians and cells. Lithuanians took bodices on villages, killed some, took away women, children, the cattle and a lot of production with themselves, and took away in captivity the elder of that area Aldovine. The master Ordino sword-bearers Folkwan von Naumburg pursued Lithuanians, struck on them from the back and inflicted defeat, though a part of Lithuanians could escape, having taken with himself an Aldovine. Then Crusaders redeemed it, having given in exchange the head of the killed Lithuanian prince. Continued to govern in the city which Germans burned later, during the Lvivsky revolt in the field of Altyn to the east from Lielvarde. The second stone lock in Lielvarde began to be built on other coast of Rambini in the middle of the 13th century. Lielvarde became the arena of the second decisive fight of Gmate with the German knights on February 3, 1261. In the Dunamiansky annals it is told that in the next winter Lielvarde had a fight demanding Litvinov in day of blessed Vlasia, in which the knightly army got beaten. It finished the defeat of Germans begun in 1260 in fight at Durban marked the beginning of the anti-German performances which captured all west of the Baltics. Persians and Gala Pressa Azalets rose. As in fight at Lielvarde Gmate strongly lost in manpower, their Prince Troinat Triniata addressed for support the first Lithuanian king Mindaugas, having promised to recognize his power in exchange for refusal of obligations to the award.
A talented military leader convinced the king to begin a campaign against Germans at the end of August, the beginning of September, 1261 together with the Vladimir Sustal princes, and to involve them in joint actions against Livonia, for what in 1261 the embassy was sent to Vladimir to the Grand Duke Alexander Yaroslavich, and then the alliance with Veliki Novgorod is concluded.
Where did Try Alexandrovich? Alexander Yaroslavich's son reigned then. In the 14th, 15th centuries Lielvarde was the important centre of the Riga Archbishopric. Here vote the Archbishop's judge deputy accommodated. The lock performed economic functions, collecting the supplies collected from neighbouring peasants for sending to Riga. About 1435 the Archbishop was forced to give the lock to the Livonian award. Then the Archbishop redeemed the lock, and transfer of this possession from hand to hand repeated once again until the Archbishop Jasper Lind presented it to St. Anthony's Brotherhood. During the first stage of the Livonian War, 1558-1561, Lielvarde was strongly destroyed and the Livonian award stopped existence. Under the Walensky Union this territory departed to the Duchy of Semigalia. The Lielvarde lock was repeatedly reconstructed. During a time of the blossoming it consisted of a citadel on the high coast of Daugava and a strengthened foreburg. It was impossible to take him from the river as he towered over a water surface approximately on 12 meters. During the Polish-Swedish War, 1600–1629, the knight's castle was destroyed the last time, 1613, and since then lies in ruins. War brought local depopulation, a crop failure, destructions and plague. Since 1620 the territory of Livonia was included into the Swedish kingdom. During the Swedish board the land reform, assessment of the earth and her entering into land books were undertaken. On June 21, 1631 the Swedish King Gustav II Adolf granted Lielvarde to the Inspector of Silver Affairs Heinrich Martin Wolf. In 1656 Lielvarde and Kökenstüsen were captured by the Russian army, but after signing of the Olivsky World are returned under the Swedish board. According to the order of the Swedish King Carl XI in 1689 in Lielvarde the parish school was opened for country children. About 70% of the population died in Great Plague of 1710. After Northern War the Edge was a part of the Governorate of Livonia of the Russian Empire. In 1725 one of subsidiary estates of Lielvarde, Ringmanskov, was allocated in a separate economic unit. In 1770 the owner of the estate Lielvarde, Heinrich Erich von Wolfenschild, presented Ringmanskov to the godson Baron von Igenstrom. In 1811 Elisabetta Anna von Strich sold the estate of Card Rubles Silver to Friedrich Wilhelm von Strengera, and then it carried over a sort Rothenfeldaf. Heinrich von Rothenfeld. I was born. 1822. The graduate of the Urayevsky University, the diplomat, the lawyer, the economist, the mathematician, the construction engineer who independently designed a cascade of ponds in the park of the estate. To Andrew Pumper in 1858 got a job the assistant to the land surveyor. The powerful spur to development of the settlement was given by the Rigodvinsky Railroad constructed in 1861. The first building of the station called Ringmanskov was built in 1859, and train services opened on September 12, 1861. In 1869 in Kabila the main school was open. In 1896 in Ringmanskov the first public library opened. The palace and the estate of the Baron Rothenfelde Ringmanskov in style of late classicism with elements of the Neo-Renaissance and an antique country house was built in 1905 and burned during the revolutionary events. Then it was restored on Wilhelm Romanus Roessler's project. Roessler, 1878–1949. The building was surrounded with the landscape park of 13 hectares which began to be formed in 1858. In World War I Lielvarde was destroyed, palaces of the Baron Wolf and the Baron Rothenfelde turned into ruins. On August 5, 1919 the Ringmanskov station was renamed in Rembat, and on February 22, 1926, on the basis of Board of the Riga County, in Lielvarde. On May 12, 1924 the decision of the Ministry of Internal Affairs created the Adavsky region which the part of the Rembatsky Volist and the settlement along the railway station entered. In 1940 reconstruction of the landscape park of the Rembatsky estate on the project of the architect Ilmar Yanalis began. In 1945 in Lielvarde the military airfield to which it was brought was arranged, and then the 214th Assault Kirk Aviation Division is disbanded. On June 23, 1948 in Lielvarde the collective farm Lac Plesis was created.
The party organizer, the veteran Edgar Collins, could convince residents of the fullest of advantages of collective farm and the mechanized processing of the earth, thanks to what they almost completely entered collective farm, and in the district there is no rich individualist left.
By 1951, total income of collective farm exceeded 1 million rubles, the quantity of milk cows in collective farm reached 700, the poultry farm on 5,000 hens appeared. The fur farm for cultivation of silver foxes and blue polar foxes was carried out. Melioration of boggy grounds under pastures and haymakings. In 1955, total income exceeded 4 million rubles, having increased since 1951 by 4 times. On June 16, 1949, the decree of Presidium of the Supreme Council of the Latvian Ser of Lielvarde gave the status of the industrial settlement. In 1964, the high school instead of the Kabalski 7-year was open. In the mid-60s, the chairman of millionaire collective farm Latvia
Collins provided in the territory of economy sites for construction of houses to figures of the Latvian ballet.
In 1968, in Lielvarde, the Latvia Library opened. In the Rambatsky Landscape Park, the platform for holding concerts and theatrical performances was constructed. The name of Spadola is appropriated to the island in the middle of a pond.
In 1969, the airfield in Lielvarde was reconstructed for placement of supersonic military aircraft of the Air Force of the USA.
Near the settlement of houses for military and service staff was built. On September 8, 1970, in the former barn of the Rambatsky estate, the museum of the writer Andrei Pumper opened. In 1975, the first collective farm kindergarten on 50 places where children were brought even from remote farms by special bus was open.
In 1976, the recreation center where the settlement library and children's library moved was open.
In 1984, in Avotisshil Massiva, the Lielvardsky 8-year school opened. In 1985, the collective farm opened new spacious kindergarten, below breeze. In 1988, the garden of wooden sculptures based on the poem Latvijas was open. In 1990, the Lielvardsky Music School was founded. In 1995, in Lielvarde, the first private children's art school and Lielvardsky Sports School opened. The City Council of Lielvarde carries out improvement of the Rambatsky Park, and in the cascade of falls created in the 19th century is restored. In the territory of the park also since 1997, the wooden Aldovine lock recreated on a private initiative is located. The traditional ornament on woven Lielvardsky belts is extremely popular. It was partially included in design of the Latvian banknotes before introduction of euro.
The Lielvardsky Volist was noted by the biggest contribution to a meeting Latvian Dine Christianus Baron.
61-62. Ovalmirakanti gave 54-39 songs. In Lielvardsky arrival, Andrei Pumper, 1835-1902. Was born here. He studied at school. On the basis of national folklore and legends of the native land, he created the epic poem Latvijas, 1888.
He mentions in this poem also the Lielvarden lock. On this place Latvijas entered a duel with the Black Knight.
In Lielvarde, the poet and educator Osiklis worked as the teacher. 1850-1879. After rain is called one of heroes of the play, blow, a breeze. By the name derivative of a name of the Lvivske leader Aldovin, Aldus, this name became one of the most popular Latvian man's names. In Soviet period of Lielvarde was famous for millionaire collective farm Latvijas. After the collapse of the USSR he was transformed to share society, which in 1996 was recognized as insolvent and is privatized in parts. The administrator of Share Society Olav Ziers tried to recover debts of collective farm from shareholders of the separate enterprises formed on the basis of divisions of collective farm, initiating legal claims and complicating work of the enterprise. Thus he managed to bring to bankruptcy in them. The name of the legendary chairman of collective farm Edgar Collins is born now by high school. Industry. The millionaire collective farm Latvijas possessed a big canning shop, produced juice, tinned vegetables and fruit, apple wine. He delivered this industrial output to other republics of the USSR. He also had own construction site by which forces were built the modern settlement of Lielvarde, industrial shops, boiler houses. On a fur farm of collective farm 12,000 breeding minks contained. From all collective farm production only the brewery survived, however now it is included into the Scandinavian industrial group Royal Unibrew and doesn't produce beer according to traditional recipes anymore. Transport. Through the city the electrified railroad Riga-Ace Krakow runs. There pass trains of the international message Riga-Moscow. At the railway station Lielvarde all trains, except trains of the international message, do a stop. Lielvarde is located on the 55th kilometer of a Riga-Daugavpils highway. In Lielvarde the military airfield of the Soviet Army, which after restoration of independence was transformed to base of armed forces of URI, and then NATO was located. In 2015 on and the first American walls were placed. NATO will use Lielvarde's airfield as the reserve air base. In addition, planes of the Air Force of the countries of NATO can already sit down and take off from bases in Amari, Estonia, and Sialie, Lithuania. Sites: Lutheran Church in Lielvarde. Years of construction: 1747 and 1932. At the end of the 20th century the artist Agris Liepinš decided to restore the wooden Lvivske lock. In 1997 construction on the area of 2,900 parts began. The paling, and in it several lodges of was built. In some of them pieces of utensils, clothes are recreated, and also in fortress the furnace for smelting of metal is recreated. Well restored lock ruins which were preserved in 1987 on the project of the architect Mr. Erdmanis. Andrew Pumper's Museum. Latvijas' stone and Latvijas' blanket. National Park of Lielvarde. The Rumbiņas Falls. About 1.8 m in height, on the river of the same name. Garden of sculptures in the Lielvarde Park. Wonderful inhabitants. Aldis Sagata, Latvian Soviet dancer, ballet master teacher. People's artist of CCC. Also far. Write comments. Read comments. Interesting people will tell interesting stories. All of good mood and good luck.